My name is Megan Stelter with the Yavapai College Honors Program, and today I will be interviewing Larry Humphrey. Where would you like to start, Larry?
Okay, actually, my odyssey with Yavapai College started in the summer of 1972 when I applied for a job at Yavapai College as a purchasing agent.
Wow, very nice.
And I didn't get the job, somebody else got the job. And then probably about 10 months later, I got a phone call one morning saying that the person that had been hired had just tendered a resignation, and if I was still interested, would I come back and agree to be interviewed again? And I said yes. And I did come back that second time, and the second time it took a long time to get hired, and we had a vacation planned. The place I worked, a hardware store in Mesa, it was my first year to have a 3-week vacation instead of 1 week or 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
And we had made plans to take our travel trailer and go to Utah and camp some various places in Utah. And we were a little bit confused because we hadn't heard about the job, so we stopped in Prescott on the way and couldn't find anything out. And so we continued on the trip, and then I made phone calls back to Prescott every couple of days while we were on the vacation. And near the end of the vacation, probably beginning of the 3rd week, when I called one day, I was told, well, somebody here has been trying to get a hold of you. If you'll stay where you're at right now, which was a phone booth in downtown Cedar City, Utah. But I gave the phone number, and then I stayed there at the phone booth, and 10 or 15 minutes later, the man that I was going to end up working for called me back and did somewhat of an interview over the telephone, even though he had interviewed me when I came back for the second time. But he was my boss for 3 or 4 years. His name was Ed Bergman, and he played a kind of interesting part in the history of Yavapai College because he was working on an educational specialist degree, which I understand would be the equivalent of a doctorate at Northern Arizona University.
Wow.
And he has a book in the library here that was his, what he submitted to support what he had done, which was a lot of the work on the primarily vocational part of the things that happened at Yavapai College, some of which have changed now. But there was Building 4, had a machine shop, a manufacturing program, an automotive program. They had some, I don't believe they had drafting in that building, but they had a drafting program at that time, and part of it was over there, and they taught survey, where you go out and survey land and so forth, and a person could get a degree in that. So, but anyway, he did a lot of the work. Somebody told him, this is the number of square feet we're going to have, and how are you going to handle that? And it was his decisions on how the automotive shop, for instance, was going to be set out and set up and handled. And so he was an interesting man to work for. And I worked for him, I can't remember the exact length of time, probably about 3 or 4 years, though, that he was my supervisor.
Wow.
And I was the purchasing agent, but I left after about a year and a half. I left to take a job here in town, and it wasn't a very successful decision. And ultimately, I had a chance to come back to Yavapai College and finish up something that I had started when I had hired as a purchasing agent, and that was all equipment has got a number on it that tells when it was, well, it's a number, but the number goes back to something in the computer that tells when it was purchased, how much it cost, how many there were purchased, and just things of that nature. And we had not done very good in the early years at Yavapai College at getting that up to speed. And every time the auditors came, they always wrote us up because we did not have what they called a fixed asset accounting system. And I had started that when I was a purchasing agent, but it never was completed after that. And once again, the auditors came and had written us up, and so they contacted me and asked if I would be willing to come back on a temporary basis to complete that. And I did, and then when that was about finished, which was probably 8 or 9 months, I was asked whether I'd be interested in working part-time for the college to maintain that system. And I said yes, because I didn't have any other good job opportunities lined up. And it never did become part-time because they were always finding something else to put up along with it. So theoretically, I worked a half a day with the fixed asset accounting system, and they would find other chores that needed to be done that I would work on. And after a few months of doing that, they made me responsible for what are called classified employees and administrative support employees as a personnel person. So I was a human resources. That wasn't the name. That's the name it has now. Personnel. I was a personnel officer for classified and fixed administrative support employees. And I did that for a couple of years and must not have done too bad with it, because ultimately they came and asked me if I would assume the responsibility for all of the personnel positions at Yavapai College, with the exception probably of upper level administrative positions, which I participated in, but I had no responsibility for them. And actually, I very seldom did I hire anybody. I was more responsible for monitoring the process to make sure that we stayed inside of the law on how we picked employees, and that was a very big thing back in the late 70s, because there was a lot of abuses, I guess you might say, to hiring processes at different places, and I was to be responsible for not letting that muddy the water at Yavapai College.
Very true.
And I did that from probably about 1977, when I started doing the first of the personnel things, until 1995, when I retired from Yavapai College. And then in 1996, I had an opportunity to come back to once again be a part-time person.
So to speak.
But, and I've continued to do that for 8 years now, and that's to drive the courier van. And we share the job originally between 2 people. Now it's between 3 people, because part-time employees at the college are not supposed to work over 19 3/4 hours per week. And to do that, we've had to ask the third person, because the job expanded. Originally, the courier only went from Prescott to the Verde campus and back. And then ultimately they put a small place in Sedona. And so we went 2 or 3 days a week there. And then about the same time, they opened an office in Chino Valley, the building that they're trying to work out an arrangement with the town of Chino Valley for the town to take over that building and pay us for it.
Oh.
And then about that time is when they added the facility that's out at Old Home Manor in Chino Valley.
Yes.
And that's quite a facility now.
Wow.
It started out being like a relocatable building and like a place where plants grow, and we trained people to work for that large place in Chino Valley to where they do grow plants, and they're shipped all over the Southwest and other places.
Cool.
And then we also added a facility in Prescott Valley, and now we've added a facility at the airport, not one that we built, but we bought as a result of Sturm Ruger making their operation fit at one building or one structure instead of two. And they call that CTEC, and I have a hard time remembering what CTEC stands for. Technical Education Center, Career and Technical Education Center.
There we go, very good.
And that's very busy now. And the courier van, except during the summertime, we go 5 days a week.
Yeah.
And we go at Prescott in the morning, and we go to a facility of the counties where we pick up the library books for our library, the Verde Campus Library, and then we also provide that service for Bradshaw Mountain High School.
Wow.
So we pick those books up and come back on campus and load up everything else. We go to Prescott Valley, from Prescott Valley to Sedona. And Sedona's in a building of their own now instead of a rented facility.
Very nice.
Then we go back to Cottonwood. And we leave Cottonwood, we now go to CTEC. And from CTEC we go to the facility in Chino Valley.
Wow.
And then back to campus and unload. And while we start every day about 8 o'clock, how long it operates or we go depends a little bit on what has to be done that day. Occasionally computer equipment gets turned back in because they got new. We maybe take the new, and then after the transfer's made, we pick the other up and bring it back to campus.
Wow.
And things of that nature, which go on a daily basis. And it's kind of neat because most of the time we can go over Mingus Mountain, and all of us that drive prefer to go that way than to go around. But if there's inclement weather, then typically we do go around. We go to Prescott Valley, and then we go over and get on Interstate 17 and go up to Sedona. But it's more fun to go over the mountain.
Yes.
And you don't have a tendency to get sleepy because there's plenty to do. Yeah. So I've been doing that, as I said, for 8 years now, and I hope I'll be able to continue doing it for a few more years yet.
Yeah.
We had one fellow, he just left the position not quite a year ago. It was probably about 10 months ago, and he had hoped that he could drive until he was 90. And he's about 84 or 85 now, but he had a heart problem, and he had to have a stent placed, and so he's no longer driving. So hopefully he maybe would recover enough and be judged suitable to be a standby driver or something of that nature. So
very cool. Wow. That's so many years at Yavapai. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, well, it's been kind of interesting too. It's probably the best job I ever held.
Absolutely.
There's interesting people here, and it was kind of nice. I was gone from 95 until I came back in 96 on a part-time basis. But it was kind of nice to come back because a lot of the people that I worked here we're still here at that time.
Good, yeah.
But every year, a few more of them are gone. But you still, once in a while, you run into them at the library.
Yeah.
There used to be a music instructor here, Rich Longfield, and he retired, I think, probably about 96 or 97. And I ran into him in the library. He was there checking a book out or returning a book or something. And we had a nice conversation about, and some of it was about people who had been here and who we had seen and that sort of thing. It's been kind of exciting to see the changes at Yavapai College, because when I came here, we had 4 main buildings, and then there were 3, they called them relocatable buildings, and they were buildings 5, 6, and 7, which are the structures that are across. That was art department, the mail room, receiving, and welding had been in here, in there. And when those buildings were first built, they were intended to be built in such a way that if the college changed their mind or didn't pay for them, that they could be taken away. But they were put in with concrete block and cement sidewalks and all that sort of thing. And fortunately that never happened. But those 3 buildings are still there. Through the years they did add some other relocatable buildings, and some of those are gone now. There was one that became a part of the computer facility, and the part of the progress or process where they're doing with the $69.5 million bond issue ended up with that building being taken away completely. And I imagine a couple more will be taken away too, because since I came here they built the performance hall and the library that exists now with classrooms for computer things upstairs in it. And
nice computer lab.
Was kind of exciting when for me at least, when the performance hall went online, and to see some of the things that were built in there, because I did have a little bit to do with as part of the fixed asset accounting thing with the Old Elks Theater downtown, because that was the first performance hall here, and we used that until the one that we're in now was completed. And there was some, in my mind, some really high-tech things. Like there's a bridge that goes across from one side to the other, just this side of the stage. And it's only wide enough for one person to walk back and forth on. But that's how that person can get out there to change the lights that focus on the stage and that sort of thing. And the big chandeliers that hang in the lobby there. Well, one of those they intended to install. Then at some point we discovered there was a second chandelier that had never been put in what was the Elks Theater, and that's how we come to have the 2 of them in there.
Very nice. They're gorgeous. I really like them. Wow. I remember we moved up here in '96, and I remember some of my experiences just getting into Yavapai, that we went near the portables, and none of the buildings that are here now were even up. They were just
were those
barely
art
being
classes?
constructed. Well, I had some friends that were taking dual credit, and I was just kind of poking in and out of the registration building, basically. But the whole campus is just becoming so polished, and it's so nice. And I actually just came from the Janet Napolitano conference that was in the library, and it's so fulfilling that the college has now become such a hub for communication and politics and whatnot. It's really, really interesting. It's so up there now. It's
now, you said you came in
96?
96? And you took classes here?
Well, no, I didn't take classes.
Okay.
But I, later on, when I was in high school, I knew some people that that were taking classes, and that was when I noticed a lot of the construction, and compared to then and now, it's completely different. It's the whole campus.
Are you a graduate at this point?
No, actually, I just started. This is I just.
I wondered because graduation was what, just last Saturday
Friday,
night.
Actually, yeah.
I wondered whether you had graduated then.
No, actually, I'm just starting my years here. I'm going into the nursing program.
Okay.
So.
Well, my daughter graduated from Yavapai.
Really?
Then she went on to Arizona State University.
Ooh, very nice.
And she had a part-time job at Yavapai College.
Yeah.
I think she was here more than 2 years. But mostly that was because she needed to have a foreign language. And took her more than one attempt to get the kind of a grade that she wanted for it. And she had to have that to transfer to ASU also.
Oh, very understandable.
Then later she ended up working at ASU for a short period of time. And then she went to work for a company, something Newton, and they do school programs that are funded by the federal government, and they do them nationally. And she worked her way up where she traveled for them to different places and put on programs and so forth. And now she's left them and she's working for a company called Pearson. And
Pearson Education.
Okay, Pearson do some of that same thing, and that's a major portion of her job. But they also sell textbooks and all that kind of thing
I believe
too.
I have a couple of their books actually.
So next week she's supposed to go to North Carolina, and this will be her first time to go to North Carolina. So,
wow.
Yeah. Did you time us when we started?
Well, we have about, I'd say, 30 minutes in, and I had a couple other questions up my sleeve if I wanted to answer those. Now, did you have, as far as the student body goes, did you have a lot of involvement or observations of how they changed over the years, or biggest characteristics?
You mean now that I'm gone as a full-timer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I don't have a lot of
that.
And some of that probably is because of my hearing loss. I was an officer in a credit union for a while, and that got to be something I couldn't handle, because if I could hear the question, I couldn't hear the answer. If I heard the answer, I didn't know what the question was. So,
that's understandable. So, wow.
And I would have that same problem at a lot of other things around here too. So.
Well, it seems like you've really found your niche in how you can help Yavapai and your involvement with it.
Yeah.
Sometimes people come here and it doesn't just quite fit them, you know. In many ways, it's a fantastic school for me. It fits me just right. It's advanced enough to be convenient and very good for learning, and yet it's still very, very community oriented, and I really like that. So.
When I was a full-timer and still could hear better, and my hearing loss has been kind of a progression. I first started out with little tiny hearing aids, and
little guys
now they're bigger and bigger batteries and more powerful, but I still don't hear any better. My limit to hear, for most purposes, is about the distance that you and I are apart. Beyond that, I'm not much good.
Well, technology is advancing so much as well as with Yavapai that maybe you might just reach some sort of a server or a new
I'm trying to think of some of this I did when I was on the payroll, but the first man I worked for at Yavapai College, Ed not Branson, I'm sorry, he was an art instructor and a great guy. Edward Bergman. And he was a man that did the work that's in a book over in the library.
Okay.
At one point, he needed to do a program to take out to high schools to encourage teachers and students to come to Yavapai College. And I helped a great deal with that. Even to the point of processing some 35 millimeter slides ourselves, which I had done previously, and which Mr. Bergman had done when he was working at Northern Arizona University before he started this educational specialist program. And that was exciting to do. It took a lot of nighttime hours to get it,
sure.
and it was used a great deal for a while, and probably a transition of that could still be used today, but things changed. We had
True.
Two 35 millimeter projectors, and then we had a tape player that played along with that, and it had to be coordinated. So when the slideshow changed, the voice changed too.
Wow.
And that was probably one of the most fulfilling things, was seeing that when it was finished.
Yeah, absolutely.
I went with them a few times to show it different places. Then ultimately Mr. Bergman developed the capability of doing that himself, and I didn't have to do that anymore. But it's still a fond memory too.
Absolutely. Do you think it was successful?
Pardon me?
Do you think it was a very successful campaign?
Was that successful campaign? Yeah, it was. It helped enrollment for vocational students, which have undergone more than one progression through the years, because what used to be Building 4 and had the downstairs of Building 4, which was automotive and not the welding. Welding was in a separate building. The manufacturing and some things of that nature that were in that building, and some of those are what's out at CTEC now.
Yeah,
and it's dedicated to a different way of teaching than what we had originally. So.
Well, as far as the vocational programs go and the future of Yavapai, would you like to see them expand, or do you really like where they're at right now?
I don't know. Every few years there's some dialogue whether Yavapai College should become a 4-year school, and it gets talked about a lot, but nothing's really happened with that. And probably part of that maybe is politics, because the current 3 4-year schools probably would rather not have a community college become a But Yavapai College serves a useful purpose if you stop and think that NAU, ASU, Old Dominion use our facilities where student can come here and can still get a 4-year degree.
Not only that, Yavapai helps students become more acclimated to college so they can be more successful at the big 3 colleges, including Old Dominion. So I think Yavapai plays a really integral part as far as the process goes, and it is a little disheartening that, as far as due to competition issues, that they don't want us to become better and they don't want us to grow. But do you see Yavapai kind of fighting that, or do you see it staying content at where it is at right now?
I see it continuing to function much like it does now, with probably some ongoing things that occur that to offer programs we haven't offered in the past, and maybe decrease or cut out programs that are no longer
necessary,
functional in the work world or the business world.
Very nice. Well, what would probably be, in closing, what would you be like the biggest change or the biggest improvement that you would like to see in Yavapai as far as its student body, its teachers, its buildings, anything that you've had great involvement in? Anything that you wish for Yavapai to happen?
I continue to use Yavapai College libraries, but that's kind of a bad thing, because on the courier you carry these tubs of books in, and it's surprising how many times something on the top is something that I end up later checking out and reading. And,
very nice.
And if for no other reason, that's a good way to find the books.
Absolutely. Introduce to nice reading. Absolutely. No, I love the facilities here, and I hope they stay as, I mean, I know it's brand new in some senses, but I hope it really stays maintained and as functional and as really nice as it is now. So.
Do you see yourself going on beyond Yavapai?
I do, but in a sense, I would feel like this would be my greatest experience at Yavapai. After I received my RN degree, I would like to go to one of the big colleges to receive a master's or a bachelor's, but
Harvard or Yale,
some like that. But I still don't think that it'll quite be the same. I think this will be. I made a very good choice in staying here.
And I understand you're doing what you're doing because you're part of the honors program.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but I really like this experience. So the honors program is one of the parts of the college that I really think is one of its shining stars, and I'm very, very glad to be involved in this. So. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Alrighty. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.